Well, hello and welcome to our Thursday night masterclass. You might be watching the recorded file. If you are, welcome. So glad you made time to watch. This is going to be one that you are so happy you joined in live or you're watching our recorded file, because I have such an amazing guest, such a beautiful guest, I might add as well. And I'm really personally so excited to talk about this topic. I think it's something that we need to focus on more. And we're really talking about how to set up our personal selves for the most professional success. Like, we forget that when we're entrepreneurs, small business owners, big business owners, even employees, that to perform well in business, our personal self should be performing at its best as well, which is why I thought of no one better than my dear friend, Christine Hassler, also author of Expectation Hangover. As you can see, I've been making my notes. And let me give you a little backstory on Christine if you don't know her. Christine is a best-selling author, of course, of the recently book, Expectation Hangover. She also has a few other books that you should definitely check out on Amazon. She left her successful job as a Hollywood agent to pursue a life she could be passionate about. For over a decade as a keynote speaker, retreat facilitator, spiritual psychologist, and life coach, at host of the top-rated podcast, Over It and On With It, she has been teaching and inspiring people around the world. Christine believes once we get out of our own way, we can show up to make the meaningful impact we are here to. Literally couldn't be a better person for this topic this evening. Thank you so much for being here, Christine.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to play with you again, Chelsea.
Right? I know.
But yes, I'm so happy to be here, and we're talking about what I'm most passionate about. So
Yes, well, a little backstory on Christine and I. We go back several years now. We were on the Cosmopolitan Millennial Advisory Board together. And it was really exciting because we were actually on this millennial panel as, you know, the advisory board members for Cosmopolitan magazine. And it was the first ever millennial-oriented panel Adweek had ever done. And we were a part of that, which is really, like, you know, going to go down in history. And now look at us. I think it's like 5 years ago already.
I don't know. Facebook told me recently how many years. Sometimes I love those Facebook memories. Sometimes I hate, because it just, I'm like, oh my gosh, how was that 5 years ago? But
right?
Well,
I know. Time is just flying. And I think time is also going to be a theme within this conversation as well, because of how to stay present in a world that's moving so fast. And I think that has a lot to do with tonight's conversation. So we are about to dive into how to set your personal life up for professional success. And I used Christine's book, Expectation Hangover, as such a guide to navigating the conversation tonight. So I'm ready to dive in because I want to make the most of our hour together. So before we get into it, can you give us a little backstory on the journey to creating this book, Expectation Hangover, which is like the most brilliant name, and I use it all the time. I always give you credit, but it really is such a thing that you coined. So give us the backstory.
Yeah, well, the backstory in terms of the name was, like, nobody likes a hangover. Most people, unless you've never drank, most people can either have had a hangover or have watched a movie when someone's had a hangover or been around someone that has it, and it's like the most miserable thing. And you just want to get out of it, and things are spinning, you have a sense of regret, and it's just like, I want this to be over. The same thing happens with disappointment. And really, disappointment comes from unmet expectations or unexpected things we don't want. So I define an expectation hangover of one of three things. Either life doesn't go according to a plan. You're not married by 30. You know, that you didn't get the job that you thought you were going to get. Or life does go according to plan, but you don't feel like you thought you would. Like, you got that relationship, but you're not fulfilled. You got that job, but you don't feel confident. Or life just throws you an unexpected curveball. You get laid off. You get broken up with. So on and so forth. Even like small things like a parking ticket. Things not going according to plan, right? So the journey for me was, I was a very insecure kid. I had a lot of like social issues, felt like I didn't belong. And anytime we have anything hard or traumatic in our childhood, we feel less than, or we feel unsafe in some way, or we feel like we don't belong. And so we have to come up with a way to feel more than. I call it a compensatory strategy. There's all different kinds. I have a workbook on it. Maybe we can link up to this after.
Yes.
I'll write about it in Expectation Hangover. But my particular brand of compensating was to become an extreme overachiever. I thought, well, if I don't fit in, if people don't like me, I'm just going to be successful.
Mm.
So that drove me and drove me and drove me. And it created a lot of things on the goal line, the external line of life. But inside, I wasn't happy. So even professionally, like I was the youngest ever female agent, making a lot of money by the time I was 25. Professionally, I looked like I had it all together and things were great. But personally, on the inside, it was a completely different story. And that led to me quitting my job. And then that led to what I called my quarter life crisis, which, I didn't have my job. I went into debt. I got disowned by my family. I got diagnosed with an undiagnosable autoimmune disorder on top of dealing with depression since I was 11 and being medicated for that. And then my fiance dumped me 6 months before my wedding.
No.
So massive expectation hangover in every level. And what I realized was that I had a very much oriented to life as life happens to me or it's my fault. Mm-hmm. Either I'm a victim or I majorly effed it up, right? Mm-hmm. And either one of those places are healthy places for us to be in. And so I started to consider through the help of my coach at the time that life happens for me. And I may be the common denominator in all these circumstances, meaning, yes, I'm not a victim, but how can I become empowered and find my way out of them through personal growth? Mm-hmm. And so to get to the true answer of your question, how Expectation Hangover was born was, by the time I wrote it, I'd been a coach for 12 years. I'm a coach and I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And I saw that time and time and time again, people's biggest growth spurts personally came from disappointment. People don't come to me as a coach and they're like, oh, Christine, everything's great.
So great. Yes.
Everything's great. There's nothing in my life I want to change. They're not what they want. They have an expectation hangover on some level. And that's when we get to go in and do the work. And it's usually not just about that thing. If you got laid off, it's not just about being laid off. It's about every other time you felt not good enough or every other time you felt rejected. If you continue to be in relationships where you don't feel satisfied and you're a people pleaser, then that's because you're putting yourself last as a priority. There's so much to unpack in all of it. And so I just became so excited when people would have an expectation hangover, not because I want people to suffer, but because I know that they're on the brink of a big breakthrough.
And you know what you said can't resonate enough with me. And I'm sure people, it's hitting home for them, but you have these breakthrough moments when you're having a breakdown moment. Yeah, totally. But even though you might think, you're never going to get out of this moment, there's always silver linings, right? That in these messages that you just have to be on the lookout for to receive. And in 2016, I had the most incredible and the most terrible year of my life. And all within the same year, my grandfather passed, a business of mine collapsed that I was doing out in Florida, California. I lost friends. I lost so much of my own personal investment. I lost family investment, VC investment. I lost my pride because it was my true biggest failure to date. And I saw black for 6 months. It took me a good 6 months to really come see the light again, but it was truly the best. And then on the positive spectrum, I got married in 2016. So this was all of this demise was happening only 6 months before I was getting married. I almost canceled my wedding because I said, how can I perform or walk down the aisle and feeling the way I do? And thankfully I worked on myself for the past leading up to the wedding, and I did not move the wedding, and I shouldn't have. But long story short, I am so thankful for that experience now because of all that I've learned. I know that I'm stronger from it. And it made me realize that failure is not something to be ashamed of, to fear, to put yourself down about. It's something to learn from. And you could choose to back down or learn. And that is one of the reasons why it is so important to talk about this conversation, because like what you said, you were one of the youngest female agents, right? Big wig, but you are a mess inside. Totally. And I was just at a speaking event, Christine, called Women's Empowerment Summit here in Fort Lauderdale. And I had a series of women come up to me and like, oh my God, how did you do what you do? How did you get to where you are? You have everything working for you. And I'm like, if they only knew the struggles and the obstacles and the heartache and the tears and the blood, sweat, and everything that I've had to put in to get to where I am today, that would be more relatable than this image of perfection. Yeah. So we have to acknowledge our expectation hangovers and be able to be able to admit that nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
No one is perfect. And as much as you plan and want to control everything, something's going to deviate, right?
Absolutely, because it's the only, like, if you had gone through the rest of your life, that was a success, and then your next thing was a success, and the next thing was a success, you wouldn't have the relatability and the humility that has come from that. Right. And you're also going to have better business sense and better people sense and all of those kinds of things, and all of those opportunities. That's why when I speak and when I share in all my books, Expectation Hangover was written after I got divorced. So I got dumped by one guy, got engaged to another one, and 4 years later was going through a divorce. And oh my gosh, so much shame about that, because here I am, a life coach, and I got my heart broken, and then I found my soulmate, and then I'm getting divorced. Oh wow, like, talk about failure. And breaking through all my ideals of marriage is supposed to be forever, and so on and so forth. And of course I've had my business ones as well. But it's in those moments of vulnerability that, one, make us relatable, and two, make us take a deeper look at ourselves and what really matters and why we're making the choices we're making. Because oftentimes what is a failure is sort of, I'll just use the word the universe sort of course correcting us and getting us on a different track. And as hard as it is in the moment to be with that failure, because I do believe failure is about resistance, and I also believe failure is a process of elimination, and I also believe that any failure or rejection often is a course correction. It is a big whap to go this way, because I can look at a lot of my failures, and yes, I grew so much for them, and yes, they made me more resilient, and now with some hindsight, they also changed my trajectory. And without them, I wouldn't be where I am. And that's the hard thing when you're right in an expectation hangover, to have that perspective. And people will say, oh, it'll get better and time heals all wounds. But I hate that expression, time heals all wounds. I'm like, I don't want to wait for time. I want to heal it now. Right. Which is the reason I wrote the book, because we can heal it and kind of move along a little faster in terms of creating something that's even more in alignment for us. I think the biggest thing that gets people in trouble with failure is shame. That's a huge one. Pretending like you're okay when you're not. Going to coping strategies like overworking, overdoing, over anything, eating, drinking, shopping, social media, and whatever it is. The overworking is the most societal acceptable one. Or just being strong, plowing through, trying to get to the blessing. And sometimes you just need to freaking fall apart for a little while.
Yes. And it is okay to freaking fall apart for a little. Like, I never, in my 6 months of darkness, I remember saying to Jordan, my husband, at one point, it's like, I'm going to bake brownies and I'm going to add chocolate chips to them, and I'm going to sit my ass on the couch and I'm watching trash TV all day. Yeah. And that's what I'm going to do today. And I just remember by the end of the day, waking up the next day, it's like I even felt that much better because I gave myself that moment. I acknowledged what I needed in that moment. And if you're just tuning in, I see a few more people trickling in. We're also streaming live on Facebook, Christine. We are talking with Christine Hassler, author of Expectation Hangover. It is a phenomenal read. You can get it on Amazon. And we're talking about how to set our personal selves up for professional success. So I want to get into some of the nuggets within the book. And the first nugget is the what's and the whys of Expectation Hangover. And maybe you addressed it a little bit, but what do you mean the what's and the whys of Expectation Hangovers?
You mean like what is it and why do we have them?
Yes. And, for also a few more people are trickling in. So maybe another little version of your definition of the what's and the whys.
An expectation hangover is basically disappointment. It's when one of three things happen. Things don't go according to your plan. Things do go according to your plan, but you don't feel like you thought you would. Like you get that promotion, or you're finally an entrepreneur, but wait a second, you still don't feel confident and successful. Or life just throws you an unexpected curveball. A business goes south, a relationship, you get diagnosed with an illness, things like that. And they happen for a variety of reasons. One, to teach us, because we as humans like to believe that we have 100% control. And we don't. And we love certainty. We really love certainty. We love some spontaneity and uncertainty, but only the kind that we pick.
Right.
So we have an obsession with knowing and an obsession with certainty, and expectation hangovers humble us and really show us, wow, we don't have control over life, but we do have choice over how we respond to what happens, because there's what happens and then what we make it mean. And so that's another why for expectation hangovers happen, is because it's helping us learn that. It also, like I said, often happens because we have, all of us have some unresolved issues from our past, specifically childhood, adolescence, things like that. And oftentimes expectation hangovers happen to trigger kind of old stuff to come forward for us to look at. So they also happen because they're a healing opportunity. And they get us to look at our relationship with ourselves. They get us to look at how we talk to ourselves, how we take care of ourselves, what our compensatory strategies are. So they really, really are, in terms of the why, they're a huge, huge, huge human growth opportunity, and often a catalyst for making major changes in our life, first inside and then outside.
One of the things that I think as a society that we do, whether we know it or not, all throughout the day, is that we should all over ourselves.
Totally.
I should be doing this. I should have this many followers. I should be making this much money. I should be married. I should have children, right? There's so many reasons that we should all over ourselves. And I feel that the shoulding is really not good for us, right? It's kind of banging us down instead of empowering us to actually be. So how can we overcome the shoulding? How can we acknowledge it when we do it, but not treat it negatively, turn it into a positive?
Well, first we got to look at why we do it. So everybody needs to be motivated. Like we all need a reason, a why. And unfortunately, too many of us use our inner critic, and the inner critic is the one that shoulds all over us, to motivate us. So we're afraid that if we stop shoulding all over ourselves, we won't do anything. So that's the biggest thing, is to really be aware that you're shoulding on yourself, not because so many people, they know better. They know I shouldn't should all over myself. Why can't I stop doing it?
Right.
The reason is because some part of you is using that as motivation. So we've got to find a different form of motivation. I like to say we have to find inspiration. Instead of like pushing ourselves, we have to find something that pulls us forward. And instead of going, what should I do? What do I want? What do I feel called to? What do I need in this moment? And comparison is also an epidemic, and social media has made that so much more available for us. Like I can just pick up my phone, and in 2 seconds I can be in a comparison coma just by swiping my finger through Instagram twice. So one thing that I love to teach about comparison is it can be useful. And here's how. Not to motivate you, not to push you, but anything like, so Chelsea, if I see something in you that I'm comparing myself to, and I have maybe jealousy or envy, or I start shooting on myself, what's really happening is it's a projection. I'm seeing something in you that I'm not owning inside myself. Okay. So let's say I'm seeing you and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so eloquent and so driven. Like, why am I not more like that? You express your eloquence and driven in the Chelsea way. What I'm seeing in you is that, and I'm not owning it inside of me. So I'll give you another example. Like if I am comparing myself to Beyonce and be like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 I should be this, I should be that. Does that mean I need to go and be a rock star? No. But I'm seeing something in her I'm not owning in myself. Maybe it's that she's totally speaking her truth and going for it and taking risks and doesn't care what other people think. So it's that you spot it, you got it. So if you're comparing yourself to someone, really think about what are the qualities that you're seeing in them that you're not owning inside of you. And that helps me with comparison. And it also helps me not should, because when we're shoulding, we're not aware of like the way we need to do it in our own way. And like we all have our own timelines. And it's more that question about what do I want? What do I need?
I love the term comparison coma, because I think we all have that experience from time to time as well. And your comparison coma, I always talk about this distortion of reality via social media.
Yeah.
We only see what people post.
Totally.
Nobody posts a bad looking selfie of themselves. Nobody posts a vacation gone wrong. Nobody posts them devastated after they were dumped. You know, so we all see the best of people through social media, or, you know, or maybe sometimes the worst of people. That's a different story. But, you know, and I feel like we always have to remind ourselves that we're seeing the highlights of people's worlds, not what goes on behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
And the importance of acknowledging it, remembering it, and then taking a minute to say, what am I envious or wanting of this person, and how could I fulfill that within me?
Yeah, how can I see those qualities in me? Because if you're looking at someone who, let's say you're comparing yourself to someone that just got engaged, and you're like, I should be engaged by this age or whatever, then what are you seeing in them? Are you seeing their confidence? Are you seeing their belief in it? Are you seeing their open heart? Like, does your heart need to be open? Like, what are you specifically seeing? And there was something else I was going to say about the comparison thing and the shoulding thing. What was it? Well, it'll come back to me. It'll come back. But I think it's, you know, what's so important for us to do is, you're right, not everybody puts their behind the scenes footage. Oh, this is what I was going to say.
Yes.
A lot of times what people put on social media, like I put a picture, I was in Paris last week, and I put a picture of me like in front of the Eiffel Tower. And that was like a genuinely happy moment in my life, right? It was just like a really great moment. And so we want to be able to celebrate too.
Yes.
You don't want to look at being, oh, like nobody's authentic, like it's fake, like she's really not that happy. Someone actually really could be that happy. That doesn't take away any of your happiness. So one thing that I have practiced, and this has helped me so much not getting comparison comas, is when I'm scrolling through and I see somebody kicking ass at something or having a great time or in love, I'm like, yay, awesome. I celebrate it, because I don't want to live in a scarcity, and I don't want to think just because they have it that there's less for me. That's not true. And the more we can be in the celebration of other people, the more it's like contagious. The more we're in that vibration, that puts us closer to what they have.
Yes. And I love that. And, you know, and I think aside from the fact that we're shooting all over ourselves and all this comparison envy, a lot of that comes into play because of how connected we are as a society. So we have so much access to everything that sometimes we could feel like we're getting left in the dust. Well, you know, because people might look like they're moving at lightning speed ahead of you, even whether they are or they are not. So I know that I am so guilty of this, and was really looking forward to hearing your response to this question, is how can we remain more present in this super fast world that we're living in this incredibly, you know, instant gratification society that we've become. I call millennials also the Insta generation, because we want everything now, fast, or like yesterday. And the fact that we've seen such tremendous success for others happen in such a rapid capacity, you know, it makes us think, well, why shouldn't that happen for me? So going back to the initial question, it's like, how can we remain present where we are right now without thinking 10 steps ahead that might ultimately be like holding you back from the next step to take?
Well, let's talk about what gets in the way of being present. And this is so much of the work that I do kind of on the spiritual psychology level. And spiritual psychology has nothing to do with religion. It's more about that we're not just a mind and a body, like there's a soul in there too. And it takes kind of the labels off people and really comes from the mindset that everybody has the inner resources they need to be able to heal. So kind of looking at it from that perspective, one of the biggest roadblocks to being present is when we're present, we have to feel. Most people like to do, and they like to suppress any feeling that feels uncomfortable. So when we're in the present moment, I might be aware that I'm sad about something my mom said to me last week, or something like I got triggered by something, or I'm angry about something, or there's a physical pain in my body. So that's one of the biggest roadblocks to presence, is because when we're present, it's like, A, we have to feel, and also B, like we have to be with ourselves. And so many of us, our inner critic is like so loud that sitting and being present is just excruciating, because all we're hearing is our own self-talk that's terribly negative. So that's why we avoid the present moment a lot of the time, is because it can be uncomfortable. So the first thing is, and I mean, from reading Expectation Hangover, I teach this a lot, is learning how to deal with your emotions, like learning how to be with yourself and know that there's a part of you having a human experience, and then there's a part of you that's compassionate and wise and is there for you and can handle anything. And having more comfort with you and you, so that the present moment doesn't feel scary and daunting. So that's the first thing, is removing the roadblocks to the present moment. And then the second thing would be setting up practices around bringing your conscious awareness back to the present moment. Like for me, breath work has been incredibly important, and meditation has been incredibly important. And anytime in nature, things like that, where I'm training my mind to come back to the present moment. So a lot of people don't meditate because they say, I can't because I always think. All the more reason to meditate. I've been meditating 15 years and I still think when I meditate, but I'm better at being aware when my mind wanders off and bringing it back to the present moment. And that's what meditation really is about. It's like mind wanders off, because that's what the mind does. You bring it back. Wanders off again, you bring it back. And so when we have those kind of practices in place, then it's easier. And then the final thing would say, so it's remove the blocks, practices, and then the final thing is know the gifts of being in the present moment. So this whole living in the future and wanting it now and figuring it all out here, we have completely lost touch with the magic of the universe and the power of our own intuition. And intuition is not just a female thing. Every human being has it. And we cannot hear our own inner guidance. We cannot be open to the magic of the universe if we're in the future or the past. And so many millennials I know run around asking so many other people for their opinion. I find that decision making for millennials is one of the biggest challenges that I see them face. I'm on like the tail end of the millennial generation. I barely made it in, just by a leg. And so I've been coaching millennials for so long, and I see that decision making it's so tough. And if more millennials, people in general, would come back to the present moment and connect to their inner guidance and their inner wisdom, it's there. The problem is the mind just gets so loud, and we're so much in the future or the past, specifically the future, that we tune down the voice of the inner wisdom. So if you would get excited about how much power is in the present moment, because you think you're more powerful thinking about the future, but you could more greatly impact your future if you spent more time in the present moment, because then the guidance comes in and it's so much more aligned, and you don't have to work as hard, and you have so much more clarity.
I just want to take a minute and say, anybody who is listening, whether you are on Zoom or via Facebook Live, we definitely want to hear what you have to say. We are happy to answer questions. If you are watching via Facebook Live, I cannot see Facebook Live messages because I'm in the Zoom interface. So if you pop into the link, you could definitely join the chat here on Zoom. But it's so nice to hear from people who are listening that this conversation is so timely. And thank you for everything that you're sharing. I think these are the conversations that people are sometimes scared to have or admit that they need, and especially in your personal and your professional space, especially because we are becoming more and more intertwined as employees and entrepreneurs today. You back in the day, you finished work and you didn't have access to your email on your iPhone. Now it's like you can never not really be disconnected unless you physically shut your phone off, and who does that all the time, So you talk about awareness and acceptance a lot within the book, and the power of vulnerability, which people might shudder at the fact of, or the thought of, putting themselves in a vulnerable situation. I think one of the reasons why so many of us are closed off is because we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So how do we come to terms with that, the power of vulnerability? How do we flip that script?
Well, I think that one, we've got a misinterpretation of what vulnerability is. So a lot of people think vulnerability is weakness, and that vulnerability is just like sharing all my dirty laundry, my deepest, darkest secrets with anyone and everyone. And to me, vulnerability is more just about authenticity and being real with people. People also think vulnerability is just about sharing the bad stuff, but vulnerability is also like being like, I have to tell you, I'm really excited about this. Like, I can't believe this is happening for me. It's all of that. And it's about having intimacy and having the courage to be seen, truly be seen, and to just be real. I think that so many of us, especially like millennials who grew up with so many images around them, and there's like my real self, and then there's my Facebook self and my Snapchat self and my Instagram self. And like, you know, we have these personas and these masks that we wear. Vulnerability is about taking off the masks and being like, you know, this is me. I just posted something. I don't know if you can see it, but I posted something on Instagram. It was like a little meme today. And it's like two pictures. I don't know if you can see it. The one on the left is like all Paddington Bear, all buckled up. And the one on the right is like what are they called? Eorcs or something like that. It's all messy and whatever. And it says how you look before your spiritual awakening versus after. And you could replace the word vulnerability there. You know, we like to present this image that I've got it all together and I'm all good and life is good. And vulnerability is like, you know what? Most of my life is good. Here's the stuff I'm working on. This is the real me. I might have a zit on my face. That's totally okay. And it's that kind of honesty. And there's strength in vulnerability because, you know, we're just like, for example, both of you and I have been vulnerable on this call tonight, sharing about our dark times and things like that. And I bet that it's made people feel more connected to us. So the power in vulnerability is that you feel a relatability, you feel a connection, and you start to really like be inspired by humans, because we're not inspired by people who just have it easy. We're inspired by people that have overcome those challenges. And the last thing I'll say about the power of vulnerability is that it also involves receiving support. I think that we kind of wear independence as a badge of honor. And we're not independent, you know, unless you're like cooking your own food and, you know, building your own homes and sewing your own clothes. Like, we live in an interdependent world. And so vulnerability often also gives us that space to ask for help and to receive help and like take off this kind of like badge of honor that we've got to do it all on our own.
You know, I'm going to step backwards from something that you said that popped up in my head. And you were saying that millennials tend to be, a generation of, it's hard for us to make decisions. And you would think that because we have so much access to information today, that access to the information would guide us in making those decisions. But does that also confuse us that much more? Like the whole too many cooks in the kitchen. And I know that millennials are definitely this peer approval generation, right? We are very influenced by our peers, hence the boom of influencer marketing. So when do we know that we've made the decision? Like I'm guilty sometimes of feeling the decision, but I'm still doing the whole hurricane cycle of checking all the I's and crossing the T's and making all these phone calls. And is it truly just listening it to your gut? Is it as simple as that?
I love that you asked this, because I just did a whole podcast last Saturday on decision making. So maybe we can link that up too. It's called Over and On With It. It was the one that aired Saturday, whatever last week Saturday was, the 22nd.
Yeah, whatever that was.
So anyway, the thing with decisions is we always know. It's either a hell yes or it's a hell no. Like, and if like you really like it's neither, you just need more information. But I have so many people that run to me to get validation or permission to make a decision they already know. And I think we're also back to the conversation about failure. And this I see with millennials too, and maybe it's just kind of a life experience thing. And I think it's also, you know, for the most part, millennials were parented in a way that made life a little easier and had parents that were very over-involved and parents that helped them make every decision, or at least one parent or a teacher or whatever. So the muscle for making my own independent decisions and trusting myself is a little atrophied. So one of the things that the exercises that I talked about on the podcast and that I give a lot of people, especially millennials, to do is take a solo decision-making pledge, where for 1 week, you make all decisions in your life without consulting anyone else. Unless it's your spouse and like, you know, or work, whatever. But most things, like, what should I wear? Should I call this person? What should I order on a menu? Like, like, you can make those decisions. And even the big decisions, like, should I quit my job? Should I break up with this person? You already know. Like, you already know. And it's trusting that and knowing that limbo is hell. And you can't get more clarity about a choice until you actually make the choice. And then the universe will give you feedback. But sitting in limbo won't get you anywhere.
Why do we choose to sit in limbo and wait to rip the Band-Aid off? And I'm sure most of us could know what it's like to have that feeling where you're about to break up with somebody, or you're about to, fire a client, or you're about to have a really, intense conversation. You keep putting it off. And as soon as you rip the Band-Aid off, you feel like 100 million pounds has been lifted off your chest. So what is the psychology behind us torturing ourselves until we rip the Band-Aid off?
Well, it's amazing what we do to avoid, it's amazing the long-term pain we create to avoid a short-term pain.
How does that make sense?
It doesn't, but that we all have a comfort zone with suffering. Mm-hmm. And we'd rather, see, this comes back to control, Chelsea, right? Because we don't like uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm in limbo, at least I have some control and some certainty because I haven't made the decision yet. So nothing changes. So even though it sucks, even though this relationship is awful or the job is awful, I'm certain about it. I know how it is. Like, I feel like I have control. As soon as I leave it or I make a choice, then I'm in a leap of faith. Then I'm in a free fall. Then I'm in the uncertainty. And psychologically, that's hard for a lot of us because it makes us feel very unsafe. And it triggers that survival mechanism in the brain. So what the work is we've got to make ourselves feel safe in uncertainty, like safe in those moments where we don't know. And that's when, again, a meditation practice, a spiritual practice, a coach, a good group of soul friends, all those things come in handy because then you can rip that Band-Aid off a lot faster rather than sitting in the comfort zone of certainty, which is only comfortable because it's familiar and not because it's really good.
Definitely. And there are some people, and I'm going to call you out, you know who you are, with the people that like to walk around with victim on their forehead, totally. Right? Versus the people that might feel bad doing it. Like, if they're about to go break up with someone or if they're about to go, let's fire somebody, they feel bad. So it's like that personal, it's like our personal baggage, even more than what we're about to say. Right. So for the people that might feel like they are the victim or that everything is hard for them, nothing is just easy. Why is it always a struggle?
Yeah.
How can we not belittle those people, of course, but say, erase the victim and move on. And that's way too easy, right? It's way easier said than done. Right. But for those people that feel like everything is a challenge, right, what can we do to overcome that challenge and really work through it to move on? Like, there's no time to be the victim today.
Right. Well, so for people that will admit that they kind of play the victim card, first, I just want you to know you have my compassion because you're doing it for a reason. Mm. You're doing it because there's such low self-worth that you think that unless you have problems, people aren't going to give you love and attention. Mm. So that's why a lot of people wear the victim card, is because they don't know how else to get love and attention. And then they keep recreating unconsciously expectation hangovers and situations where they are the victim, because that's the only way they think they get support, love, and attention. So to come out of the victim, you got to kind of come into that place sort of similar to where I was when I had my quarter life crisis of going, okay, wait a second. I am the common denominator in all these situations. I can either, and most victims secretly do blame themselves too. So I can either like blame myself, or I can be a victim, or I can look at what am I learning. So how you get out of victim thinking is you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you ask instead, what am I learning? What am I learning? If you can just do that one thing and shift it and make sure that you're getting love and attention in healthy ways, and forgiving yourself for buying into the BS belief that you need problems to get people to pay attention to you, then that's going to help you evolve out of the victim more.
And I do think that that goes back to the comparison coma and, oh, well, it's not happening for me, but it's happening for her. And, you know, that does tie back the conversation to social media and us being so connected to be so aware of what everybody else is doing. I have to say, like, I know that we are somewhat of public figures, right? Our life is definitely a little bit out there. But I'm still so shocked when I don't know someone and they knew that I got married. They know my husband's name is Jordan. They know I have a golden doodle. Like, I'm like, how do you know these things? Oh, right, because I share that, right? So sometimes I do think that a social media cleanse is a really good thing. Is that an exercise? I have not seen that, if that was an expectation hangover, but is there some sort of exercise? Because I love your whole make your decisions for yourself for a full week. I'm going to totally do that. But what about a social media cleanse or a digital cleanse? You know, how do you go about doing that and the benefits to that or not benefits to that?
Yeah. I think it's really important. Well, first of all, you know, social media hits the same dopamine receptors in our brain that heroin does. So it's highly, highly, highly addictive. So having boundaries on it, like, just like if you want to have a healthy relationship with alcohol, you don't go out and drink a whole bottle of vodka. Like, you have boundaries. Otherwise, like, you're an addict. And I would say that we have a world of social media addicts. So I think at first, trying to go all or nothing with an addict is kind of hard. But having boundaries around it. Like, for example, on my social media, Facebook feed and Instagram, I never scroll through my feed. Never. I will go and search the people that I care about, like my sister and like whoever, that I will, or if I see that you like one of my posts, I'll be like, ooh, what's Chelsea doing? And I'll go directly to your post, and then I'll, you know, but I don't scroll, and I don't do it on Facebook either. Because I find, one, is a huge waste of my energy. Two, it can just kind of like put me in that comparison coma place, and it can get me, like, I have a big mission, and my own mental and psychological and physical health is important to me, and sitting and doing this, there's not much payoffs to any of that. And so that's my boundary. I encourage people to come up with your own boundaries in social media. Set a timer. That's another thing that you can do is, okay, I allow myself 20 minutes on social media a day. You can all be in one chunk, or you can spread it out and, like, that's it. But you'll find that if you have some boundaries around it, that addiction pattern will break out and you'll be more present in our life. Talk about present moment. Social media is another thing that pulls us out of it. But just doing a straight up cleanse or not doing it, then you're just going to go back, right? So it's more about having the boundaries, and it's also unfollowing the people that trigger you. Like, I went through a phase about 5 years ago where I was really kind of getting to the next level of my business, and I was watching all kinds of peers from, in my perception, who were doing better than me, and getting newsletters and following them, and I just unsubscribed to everyone else's stuff. I just stopped. And it made such a big difference, because then I was just able to focus on me and my mission. Yeah.
I think that is such an amazing tip that everybody could so easily really have a self-talk and go, what are the boundaries? What are my triggers? And instead of a cleanse that, you know, like that's always my thing with like a food cleanse too. It's like, ultimately you're going to have a hamburger again if you're not a vegetarian, right? So, but I really love that tip. And I think one of the things that could immediately screw with our head, screw with our confidence, and you might be having the best day and it can totally ruin your day. And it's happened to me many of times. And I've worked on it a lot over the years, and I really could give two shits now, literally, all of you cyber trolls. But everybody has the opinion to voice their opinion on social media. So that doesn't mean that everybody's going to support you or love you or encourage you. There are going to be people that are going to try to bring you down and try to body shame you, slut shame you, and really say some mean things. I posted in my Facebook group, which everybody is welcome to join, called Verified Hustlers, yesterday, how do you respond to a troll? Do you comment back or do you leave it alone? I'd love to hear what you would do.
Yeah. Well, it depends. It really depends on the comment. Most of the time I don't get too many, honestly. Most of the time my biggest ones was when I was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I was a guest on his podcast. And I'm like steak tartare on a vegan menu for Rogan. I'm just like, I don't fit like the normal people, and I love him. He's great. And there were like, I just did not read the YouTube comments because one, I was nervous for the interview. I don't think it was my best interview. And I just knew there were going to be some nasty things said. And so I just didn't read it. So that's one of the ways I deal with things is where I can start to see that there's like, I just don't read it. So I'll have someone from my team scroll through things if I need to. And if there's something I need to respond to, I will. So if someone is I can just tell someone's just an angry person and they're just lashing out, I leave it alone. But oftentimes I've gotten emails where someone really put some thought into it and really typed something out. Like I just did a big marketing for my last course and I got an email from someone calling me no integrity and bad sales. And you said you were helping and you're really not and blah, blah, blah. And I just explained my thought process and here's what it is. And here's some free resources. And here's how this business is, and not in the need of needing to defend myself, but just more in the sense of this isn't a communication loop I want to leave open. So I feel into it and I'm like, and I also felt like with that particular person, he was crying out for help. Like he really was crying out for help. And by sending him a list of free resources and some guidance, I was answering that call. Because a lot of times a troll is just trying to get your attention. It's like the school bully who's being bullied at home. And it's really not about you anyway. They're just like lashing out at you and all they want is love. So I feel into it and I'm like, does this person need a little love? Okay, I'll respond to that. And if not, I just leave it alone and I'm like, bless them. In Texas, we said, bless your heart and let it go.
Yeah, and that was a lot of people's response. We had a crazy amount of comments back on it, and a lot of people said it depends. Like there were so many comments that started with those two words, and I think it is. Do you lean in, or is it something better left untouched? Yeah. But I do want to connect the dots between our personal self and our professional self, and how our personal self does bleed into our professional self, whether we know it or don't know it. And then there are some people, especially because of social media, that they've been able to establish their own personal brands and have been able to form it into a business like you and I. And so if we're not good, our business isn't good. So connect the dots for me and help us realize how much our personal self really does allow us to perform or not perform in the workplace.
Everything. It's truly everything. And the thing about being in our 20s and 30s is that we can get by on burning ourselves out for a while. And we can kick ass professionally, but inside kind of be a mess. But eventually that stops working. It really, really does. And then you've done some damage. Your health, your psyche, your relationships, all those kinds of stuff. And so I encourage people to start self-care super early on, because if your self-care tank isn't full and you're not in the right relationship with yourself, then how you show up professionally is definitely going to be impacted. You're going to take things less personally. You're not going to feel confident when you go in for the interview or ask for a raise. That's going to be felt energetically and you're less likely to get it. You're going to if your self-talk is nasty to yourself, you're going to keep getting more criticism from the outside source. You're going to have harder times with your colleagues or your bosses or whoever it may be. If you're not taking care of yourself in terms of sleep and diet and exercise and all those things, your brain isn't going to be as sharp. You're not going to make the decisions that you need to make. If you didn't work on yourself and resolve being bullied in 6th grade, you're going to be scared to raise your hand in a meeting, and somebody else is going to raise their hand and say what you wanted to say, and they're going to get the promotion and you're going to be pissed about it. Also in our entrepreneurial journey, I think the other thing is I really want to break this whole kind of trend that entrepreneurs are supposed to work 20 hours a day and not sleep and burn the candle at both ends. And if you're not doing that, then you're not an entrepreneur. And that's a bunch of baloney. Like, it's total baloney. And a smart entrepreneur knows that, like me as an entrepreneur, I am my business.
Right.
So if I am not good psychologically, physically, emotionally, it doesn't matter if I'm working 25 hours a day. It's not going to work. So I just can't say enough. Like, people ask me a lot about my success, and they're like, you must have worked really, really hard. And I'm like, not on my business. I've worked really, really hard on me and my business, and has evolved because of that. I attract the most amazing opportunities that come to me. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I work on the inside stuff, and then vibrationally things just line up better. And if people could really get that, like, if you do the inside work, the outside becomes so much easier, and you don't have to work that hard. You really, really don't. Yes, you have to work intentionally. I'm not saying you can work 30 minutes a day.
Right.
But you don't have to work that hard.
It's like we're
passionate about this.
No, I mean, I think so many people are like leaning in this conversation because it's resonating with the realness of all of our human beings, you know? Yeah. And one of the things that I will admit, a few months ago, I was that entrepreneur that like wasn't taking care of myself, and to the point where I got out of my chair and I almost couldn't move because I was so tight because of how much I had been sitting in this forsaken chair. And my point is that I got an email. No, I sent an email to somebody and I got an automatic response back, and it said, thank you for your message. I'll get back to you when I can. I'm taking a mental health day. And was like, this is incredible. I'm taking a mental health day. And within that week, I put on an away message to notify people that don't expect to hear back from me today, and took a mental health day, and was able to come back the next day feeling refreshed, similar to my brownies and reality trash TV, but I did not eat horrible that day and watch trash TV all day. I actually went outside and was in nature. To me, like you said, nature, animals, that is my namaste place. Yeah. So do you suggest that people try to do that? What do you think of people who are in the corporate setting and, you know, it's not that much they don't have that much flexibility? How can we work around that?
Yeah, well, first, it's important for me to say something first. I really want to normalize how much everybody struggles. How much every single human being has this like deep fear that they're not enough, that they're not worthy, that something's really wrong with them, that they're unlovable in some way, that they're broken. A lot of people feel like a fraud. They're waiting for things to fall apart. And a lot of people feel like if they didn't have anything terrible happen to them, that they should be more okay. Mm-hmm. And I just want to like normalize, like so like on my podcast, I coach people live on the air. Every numbered episode is me doing that. Listen, like you'll see how much every human being has the same questions and struggles, and this stuff comes up. And so it is like such a normal part of the human experience to have self-doubt, to have the anxiety. I'm not saying we have to sit in it, but if we can normalize it and know that it is part of it, and stop just being like, I have to be strong, I have to be okay, like I have to be happy. That like opens the door to be able to kind of do the personal development work that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So I want to say that first, and now I've completely forgotten your question. What did you ask me?
No, to acknowledge that you need a mental health day, and if you're not in the flex, if you're not in a work flex environment, like you're not in charge of your schedule, you might be in more of a corporate setting. How can we go about doing that?
So first of all, like a lot of people in the corporate setting make assumptions that they can't ask for things. So just because you're in a corporate setting doesn't mean you can't say to your boss, I really want to do well for you. I'm aware I'm a little mentally taxed right now. May I leave at 1:00 today to take care of myself? And I'm going to come in so much more clear tomorrow. Like, you're allowed to ask for that. You're allowed to do that. And it's also setting up, it's just this very simple thing. Like, how many people when they wake up, this is the first thing they look at, and it's on and all your messages and your emails before you even pee or brush your teeth. Like you're like in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So just a simple thing like not turning your phone on until 9 a.m. Maybe turning it off at 8 p.m. Like simple things like that. Even if you are working a 9 to 6 kind of job where you have to be there are little things you can do. You can get up and walk around the block for a minute, or 5 minutes. So here's the thing. Too many of you are making excuses for why you can't take care of yourself personally. And I really want you to look at the cost of that. The payoff is you keep wearing this busyness as a badge of honor, and I'm suffering, I'm working so hard, and you don't understand, my boss is a jerk, blah, 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 blah. Those are all excuses for you not paying attention to you. And eventually that's going to catch up with you. If you're not your own advocate for your mental health, who's going to be? Don't expect your boss to be like,
you need a day.
Like, notice you're a little stressed. He's obsessed with himself and his stress. Like, he's not going to like be your mental health advocate. You've got to be that for yourself.
Totally. And I love, when asking you that question in a corporate setting, it never even registered to just ask for it. Truly.
To say no. So
right. The worst thing that could happen, right? The worst thing anyone could say from a question is no. And then you can try to find how to work around the no to try to get a half yes or something like that. But as we are concluding our time together, Christine, I love that you said, don't wake up and go right to your cell phone. I try to do something for me before I start the day working for everybody else. And if you could leave us with a nugget of how to ultimately give yourself something in the day to set yourself up for a better day, or just something you wish everybody knew and did, what would it be?
I mean, honestly, this is going to sound super cheesy, but I'll say it anyway. Like the first thing you did was, not look at your phone, maybe did a short meditation, just 3 minutes of listening to your breath. And then you go into the mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say something nice to yourself. You say like, I'm proud of you, or I love you, or you're beautiful, or whatever. I'm looking forward to my day with you. Like if you start connecting with yourself, because we're so pulled into other people's worlds and experiences, if you could start each day being nice to you, that would make a huge difference.
I love that. And that's such a beautiful note to end on. I so appreciate you taking all the time with us today. And I hope that everybody listening, really allows themselves to feel and hear, and hopefully wakes up tomorrow and looks at themselves in the mirror and says something nice. I'm going to document myself doing it as proof. And I challenge everybody to do it with me. Let's document our self-acceptance, our self-love, and realize that we are human beings. We feel, we care, we hurt, and it is okay to not be perfect. It is okay to fail. It is okay to fear, but how do you overcome it? By setting those boundaries, or really self-care, self-love. And I think even taking the time, everybody, to listen to this hour masterclass is self-care, right? We're listening and hopefully receiving all these amazing messages. Again, definitely check out Christine's book. I sound like an infomercial, but this is just how much I love Christine and how amazing this book is because of all the insight. Also, one of the things that I really love in here, Christine, is all your exercises. It's not just reading, like you're challenging us to take action and do something about it. So I thank you again. Thank you for all your beautiful wisdom. And thank you everybody for tuning in. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Chelsea. So good to connect with you again.
Have a beautiful day or a beautiful evening. Good night. Sayonara. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.